The media and entertainment production industry has gone through significant changes in the last 12 months, and much of the new workflow and working practice and technology that has been introduced in that period is likely to continue well into the future.
Some of us may have introduced some knee-jerk reaction solutions, kept us productive when we couldn't visit our places of work, while some systems integrators and forward-thinking manufacturers accelerated their technology and workflows to make a lot of this more permanent. With us today is a company at the heart of the supply chain, JJ from HHB. Welcome to the show.
Hi guys.
So you must have seen quite a few changes in how your customers have been working over the last 12 months. Maybe let's start with chatting about those.
Yeah, the first phase of everything kicking off really was a scramble to get people able to deliver content. Data security was huge in, can we take this stuff off site and work from home? And then came all the internet issues where people found they just didn't have the bandwidth to push the deliverables back into the facilities. So lots of workarounds, lots of scrambling around, but we made it.
So how have you guys sort of stepped up? How have you helped out? Things like, I'm just imagining from an HHB point of perspective, a lot of your customers are going to be trying to conduct voiceovers remotely, for example. Probably quite challenging.
Yeah, it's hard to get an acoustically perfect environment, particularly at home. A lot of it was logistics, physically getting kit that people would require out to various locations. That's voiceovers requiring mics, headphones, preamps, and potentially even a laptop or Mac Mini or something to be remotely driven by the talent who may still be in the studio or may also themselves be working from home. There was all sorts of shortages and real stock demands for higher quality mics, not just for doing the Zooms and Teams meetings and things like that, but actually running proper VO for film and TV and ADR.
So I guess there must have been quite a few technical challenges with the people installing this kit as well. I mean, many of them might have been used to having an engineer on site to do it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were ways that people mitigated this. Some people had, almost a Pelly case that was just a go bag. You could drop it off. It was a clear set of instructions, plug cable A into port B and turn it on, and then tell us tell us when you're ready, and we can team viewer into it and sort of pretty much drive it all remotely. So for the talent, it was very much like the experience didn't change too much. The engineer was doing most of the work. But even just silly things like having to pack it all down and then get it collected in order to be able to sanitize it and then get it out to the next place. It's hard to gauge quite how much demand there was going to be or how quickly you had to turn things around.
So have you found there's anything that any of your clients have sort of requested, any challenges that HHB have come across that you can't do from home? Is there anything that people can't do?
Yeah, I think we've managed remote VO, we've managed remote review with various products like Source Connect or Clearview Flex, depending on the requirement for quality or latency. But doing Dolby Atmos has been a real challenge because you're talking about having somewhere in the region of 12 or more speakers, many of which are overhead and situated around the room, and the logistics of doing that versus stereo or 5.1 is clearly a little trickier. That said, we do have clients that have managed it.
So people have actually built a Dolby Atmos studio at home?
Yeah. So the vast majority of people were still having to go into the studios and do that, or tweak the deliverable aspect with the supplier, with the content providers to say, actually, can we just do a 5.1? But then we do have a handful of clients who either already had Dolby Atmos installed in a home studio, in a garage, or were already part way to planning that, and therefore managed to pull that off and be able to start delivering content.
Is that quite an involved sort of? Let's rephrase that question. What's involved in building a Dolby Atmos studio at home? I mean, is it sounds very costly.
It sounds more daunting than it actually is. Mostly,
Cool.
it's about getting those overhead speakers in and having the software.
Yeah.
The software to
Okay.
get started really isn't that expensive, but planning speaker positions is something that it's easier if you're building a new space and allowing for Dolby Atmos than it is retrofitting Dolby Atmos into an existing space, because we always have windows and doors and light switches and sockets and things that mean a speaker can't go exactly where you need it to be.
That's great. So for those people watching that may not be fully up to speed on what a Dolby Atmos Studio can really offer, can you give us a quick rundown on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dolby Atmos is moving away from just a channel-based format. It's not mono to stereo to 5.1 to 7.1. It's taking things away from channels and into object-based. So you're mixing audio within a virtual 3D space, which means you can then start to pan things not just around and behind, but actually overhead. And the tools that Dolby have created for that are very accessible. And then you can render that down to headphones and do it binaurally, but equally you can play it back in a larger environment or a big theatre where you've got up to 64 speaker channels.
And people investing in this technology, what are the major gains they can expect to see in what they're going to produce going forwards?
The content, when done right, is just so much more immersive. Sound is kind of half the work, but picture without sound doesn't work. So the immersion that you get from that is amazing, and it does scale really well. You've got a lot of people listening to content on headphones, on earbuds, on mobile devices, and the uptake of that has been huge and isn't gonna stop, I don't think, by any stretch. So the binaural mix or the down mixes that you get from it really put the media watcher right into that space.
Yeah.
So if I'm designing my own audio at the moment, how complicated is the transition? Is it a complicated transition to get into doing an Atmos mix? If I'm creating some digital content, sci-fi stuff or gaming, what's the transition like? What's the learning curve like?
Learning curve in gaming is really easy because everyone's already dealing with objects. Whether that's a character, a movement, an explosion over there, that is a visual explosion. That thing is an object that exists in a coordinate. So they're very much used to an XYZ coordinate locating something visually, and the sound just goes with that. With sort of post-production audio, we're already dealing with many hundreds of tracks in your average mix. That's not to say they're all playing at once. It's checkerboarded. There's lots of elements, combination of VO and ADR and Foley and sound effects. It's just that now, rather than mixing them to a fixed set of output channels, say 6 channels for your 5.1, they can all coexist individually just in this virtual 3D space. And then it can be rendered to the format for the consumer. So whether that's headphones, whether that's down to a 5.1 at home, whether that's a Dolby Atmos soundbar that uses clever technologies to bounce the sound off your ceiling, off your sidewalls, to give that feeling of there being sound coming from all around you, but actually it's just from the soundbar.
So what do you think the general legacy of all this work is going to be? I mean, are we going to see these trends continuing into the future? And I mean, people have learned a lot of tricks and ways to use the technology as well. How do you see this going in the future?
I think it absolutely has to sustain some of it because people have seen that it's proven to work, and the quality has been maintained throughout. It's just been achieved in a slightly different way. There's always going to be a time where hearing a big mix in a theatrical space or in a large home end space, and being able to review it with a number of people directly in the room, is that there's nothing that's quite going to beat that. But I can't see everyone continuing to do long commutes for some of the earlier stages in the post-production process. So I think a lot of these tools are here to stay.
Yeah, 4 days doing stuff at home, doing the early stages, do it in 5.1 and then finish and review multiple episodes for argument's sake, or bigger bits one day a week in the big facility in town. Yeah, I can see that.
Not everyone's maintained capacity. Some people have reduced amount of floors in their building or amount of buildings they have, because longer term, I think they can see that now they've got the technology in place to enable remote audio track play, and that you're still meeting the MPAA requirements, and in terms of sort of data security and media movement. I think now that those hurdles have been bridged, it's time to continue working that way.
What's the biggest challenge you've had over the last 12 months?
I think the most challenging but rewarding one was we did a Dolby Atmos Music Studio, where the entire conversation, start to finish, was done remotely. It was not until we were physically on site doing the install that we actually met our client in 3D.
Amazing, isn't it? Look, we've learned how to do a lot of these things, so let's hopefully take positives away from it all. Fantastic. Thank you very much, JJ, for coming in. Great to catch up. And of course, thanks to Mediaproxy for their support of KitPlus TV, and you can find out more about them at mediaproxy.com. Finally, don't forget, if you want to listen to KitPlus TV on the move, then check out the KitPlus podcast with a massive back catalogue of shows now available. See you next time.